Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Trudy's family, Stephen, Ben, Charlie, Julie, to all of Trudy's family, to her friends, those who are with us here and those who are joining us remotely from wherever this evening finds you. All of us, though here in spirit for this celebration of life, thank you for being here for this time that we will make sacred by our togetherness and by our shared effort to pay witness to a woman we loved, to hold up for one another the gifts that we knew in her, so much of which carries forward in the ways it touched us, for the gathering together in shared pain and sorrow, which also binds us together this evening. I am Vanessa Southern. I'm the senior minister of the First Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco, joined on the chancel by Rabbi Katie Mizrahi of Or Shalom Jewish Community in one of her last ritual acts as rabbi of that community after so many years. And with Reverend Allison Jacks, who we are going to ordain as a rabbi, just kidding, who is the associate minister here, who also will be retiring, and with the Reverend Margot Campbell-Gross, who's the minister emerita of this congregation. We and the other folks listed in your order of service, Mark Sumner, the choir, Reiko Oda Lane, and the bell choir, Trudy's family and loved ones, Corey Weinstein, all of us will seek to bring some of what Trudy loved and what we loved in her and who she was in song and in story and in the spirit of love and remembrance that we all bring to this time together. Thank you all for being here and being part of this honoring. After service, there will be a reception in our courtyard outdoors. For those of you who can stay, please do. We will, because of COVID, move the receiving line into the courtyard so that it's also in the most airy space for us to gather. And we just ask those of you who can stay for food and drink to go right to helping yourself and starting to enjoy the reception so that those who have to leave can greet the family first, can have a chance to greet the family before they leave. I thank you all for wearing your mask and enduring with the COVID protocols today. Thank you for continuing to do so. Please do whatever you need to attend to your own safety and comfort. Those of us in the chancel have all been antigen tested just before the service, so if we take off our masks, just know that. And so we will light our chalice. Its light, its warmth, all of it in honor of Trudy Lionel, whose life brings us together here this evening.
This is a richer universe than any of us dream. Through countless eons, the stars have rolled on in beautiful and undiminished speed, lighting we know not what other worlds. Here on Earth, the seasons have revolved for centuries, and Earth too has known her ice ages. Yet seeds have not failed. Life has survived, richer for all that is past, and winter yields to spring with her priceless wealth of herb and flower. Loveliest of Earth's flowers is the undying spirit of humanity. It may be that beyond the seen there lies a still vaster, unseen world. before the sublime mystery of life and spirit, the mystery of infinite space, of endless time, this universe of light and stars and mind, we must stand in reverent awe. This much we know. We are at least one phase of the immortality of life. Like flowers on the river's edge, we bud and bloom, unfold our season of usefulness and beauty, and scatter our treasures to the wind, bequeath our promise to the future. Meanwhile, the mighty stream of life flows on to infinite new beginnings, rich and increasing, of beauty and joy and love. And in this mighty stream, we too flow on, not lost, but each eternally significant. The path of life leads from our dawning until the setting sun, and each of us must walk that path, bring what it will, until it ends. Some will walk narrowly, fearfully, and selfishly, but there are others who give of themselves fully, carrying with them a dedication to integrity, individual excellence, and beauty. And such a soul was Trudy. So much so that even as we gather to remember her, we are powered first and foremost by the spirit of Trudy's life, the spirit of freedom, the spirit of adventure, the spirit of love. It is love's tribute we come to offer here today. Will you please rise as you're willing and able and join in the hymn, the words you'll find in your order of service, though I may speak with bravest fire.
Please be seated. Archibald MacLeish wrote, "They say, we leave you our deaths. Give them their meaning. Some lives are easier than others to find and give their meaning to, and some need no help at all. Meaning in these cases, it's palpable, it's infused in how the person lives, in all their choices, in the way they are grounded in deep intention and meet everyone in their life with a generous, fierce love. Trudy was such a person. A letter was found in Trudy's nightstand, was it? Her desk. After she died, it isn't clear for whom it was written, and the person to whom it was written was left blank. It might actually just have been an exercise in clarifying her values, with a letter as a way to invite her into it. We don't know, but we know what it says. In it, she writes how she'd like to live without, quote, the worry of a nuclear war, without the knowledge that people are blasting themselves to bits every minute somewhere in the world because of an unforgiving hatred and revenge. I would like the torturing and persecution of political prisoners and any opposition to those who hold power to stop, she says. And then she writes what she commits to in this moral life. How she'll try personally to do something about the misery in the world, and how, by A, doing unto others as I would have them do unto me, being open to other people's circumstances and situations, and trying to understand their arrival in those. B, supporting without going to excess organizations that are furthering and bettering the life and conditions of other people in this world. And C, writing to the government to express my views on their idiocies towards nuclear war. Let's leave the letter to the side for a moment. And let me share with you a little bit, just a little bit of what's been shared with me in the last few weeks and some of what I witnessed in my relationship with Trudy. Maddie Black, she remembers Trudy as her coming-of-age mentor in the 2006-07 school year. She was so giving and inspiring. I chose her as my mentor for so many reasons. I absolutely adored her. And the two stayed connected. She showed up, Maddie told me, whenever Maddie needed her. She took me to the ballet and opera in the years after. I loved her. Trudy was the bright spirit that Sharon York describes. Trudy and I connected in small group ministry many years ago. She then was always ready with a kind smile and a sense of caring. Ann Steele said, I knew Trudy over a long period of time. She brought her son, Benny, to the preschool, to the UU Sunday school class some 25 plus years ago, and she was a dedicated assistant. The kids painted their rite of passage kites on her back porch. I really admired her for balancing her job and the kids. Our paths didn't cross again until my daughter dragged me to the choir 6 years ago, and there was Trudy, the versatile alto tenor recorder player. Anne was one of the many people that had been roommates with Trudy over the years on one of the many choir trip adventures. The choir trip to South Africa, which the choir took a few years ago, it didn't include a safari experience, Anne wrote, and I couldn't find anything that felt right. I overheard Trudy explaining why she was going to Botswana. The people were peaceful because the government shared the diamond revenue through education and developing the country. I asked her if she would mind if I joined the tour, and she was so gracious. And it turned out that there were no other single rooms left for a few nights, and she cheerfully shared her lodgings. And it was a great adventure. Even though she caught a terrible cold, she was enthusiastic and curious about everything. On the final day, we had a new guide who would take us to the airport. In the afternoon, he was so delighted to show off his talent. We ended up a stone's throw from a group of mama elephants. There were maybe 10 moms and 6 or 7 babies munching away. He drove the Jeep very close, and one of the mothers turned and trumpeted. The ladies circled the little ones, and he shot out of there. We were holding on and laughing from terror and embarrassment from getting too close when we noticed a baby was chasing us. We turned and screamed at our guide to go faster. We outran him and made our way to the airfield, where we were told we would have to wait while they chased a warthog who loved to harass airplanes into the bush. I will miss her. We will all miss her. Up in the choir loft, ringing the bells, out at the protests, putting her beliefs out in public, speaking the truth, animated by an intelligent and buoyant optimism. The faces of Trudy, the stories of people going to walk with her while she was undergoing chemo and radiation, but instead finding themselves being ministered to by her while they walked, because she would ask such beautiful questions, and she had this incredible, deep listening presence. Trudy was smart, she was capable, artistic and a lover of the arts, up for any adventure, domestic or international, a devoted mom and wife and friend, with a smile that spoke of a welcome so warm that it overcame the intimidating reality of her commanding height. We loved her. So, like for her family and all of you, it was very hard for everyone here to watch her get sick. It was incredibly powerful to see her muscle through, and humbling how she insisted on showing up for others and for important moments. Here and so many other places, I imagine Trudy will always be loved and missed. So going back to that letter at the beginning, it's clear that Trudy lived that first resolution, the golden rule one, in her unending kindness and non-judgmental presence. You should also know that Trudy in her life supported 52 charities that she thought bettered the world, and left some instructions about how they should be supported if she ever should pass. So, B, check. And as to the last one, about whether she wrote to the government about their idiocy around nuclear war, I don't know. But I bet we have our suspicions, don't we? You did it, Trudy. You lived a beautiful, meaningful life, and on your terms. Stephen, I'd like to invite you forward, if you don't mind going to the lectern.
I'm here with my two children, Benny and Charlie, at my sides as my pillars of support. Julie, sorry. Say Trudy. Julie and Benny here at my pillars of support, who have been outstanding comfort to me this past month and a half since Trudy passed. Also, at the outset, wanted to thank the large number of people who have helped us put this remembrance together. Reverend Vanessa, Rabbi Katie, Ms. Rahi from our Orsalem Jewish community, Rachel Lane on the organ and leading the bell choir, Mark Sumner leading the vocal choir, and Susanna here at the church, who has been, all of these people have been incredibly helpful, and many others as well, and I'm very grateful to them. So, to all of our friends and family here and friends of Trudy at this church, thank you all for coming to join in this commemoration of the life of Trudy, who was my love and life partner for the past 47 years. Trudy generously shared with me her love, guidance, advice, help, and support whenever it was needed, and perhaps then some. Together, we were a good team for creating a family that reflected our common social and moral values, with the additional support and strength of both of our two respective religious communities. Trudy grew up in a small town on Vancouver Island called Nanaimo in British Columbia, Canada, on Vancouver Island, with her older brother Rory and her younger sister Michelle, whom they called Sally. Following the example set by her two hardworking professional parents, Trudy set and achieved high academic standards from an early age. She was on her school team competing in the Canadian national program called Reach for the Top. Trudy was brilliant in both the liberal arts and in the sciences. She also was a scholar with her musical pursuits, learning to play the piano and the oboe, the latter that she played in local community orchestras through college. Imbued with a passion for chemistry from her college courses in the subject, she went on to pursue a PhD in chemistry from Vanderbilt University. And it was there that Trudy and I met in 1975, first in a graduate course on the subject of, coincidentally, physical biochemistry, and then in a weekly dinner group gathering to which my then roommate belonged, where we each in turn cooked a dinner meal for the 8 to 10 of us in the group. We soon started getting to know each other better, going out to concerts that we both enjoyed, and it wasn't long before Trudy and I knew that we were meant for each other for the long term. Our joint interest in making music, with me on the cello and Trudy on the oboe, led to our playing duets together. We were making music together, both literally and figuratively. It didn't take very long for us to become inseparable. After completing her PhD in chemistry, Trudy undertook a postdoctoral position working with an expert group performing electron spin resonance analysis on a variety of organic compounds at the Canadian National Research Council in Ottawa, Canada. At the end of that opportunity, coincident with the end of my medical school at Vanderbilt, we relocated to San Francisco in 1982 for my residency training at UUSF in pathology and nuclear medicine. We were married in 1983 in the Rose Garden in Golden Gate Park in a ceremony that was co-officiated by Reverend Joan Hull from this church and Rabbi Charles Famelant. Our vows to each other on that day were our own. Mine were from the hymn that we'll close with today. Trudy's were these words from a Salish marriage blessing. Now for you there is no rain, for one is shelter to the other. Now for you the sun shall not burn, for one is shelter to the other. Now for you, nothing is hard or bad, for the hardness and the badness is taken by one for the other. We would be all of those things to each other, and so our life together formally began. Trudy, meanwhile, had professional commitments too. She was engaged in a second postdoctoral commitment at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratories, measuring the toxic emissions of kerosene heaters. She subsequently landed a position with Hewlett-Packard, during which she was responsible for developing a controlled process for the electrochemical manufacturing of printed circuit boards. Trudy's presentation of that detailed process to the American Electroplaters and Surface Finishers Society won the award for the best presentation of the meeting in June 1988, about which she was deservedly quite proud. Trudy then took a career break for 9 years to have and raise our two beautiful children, Juliana and Benjamin. As passionate as Trudy was about her career, she took her responsibility of raising our young children full-time very seriously. We were blessed that we were able to manage the relatively high cost of living in San Francisco with just a single income earner. Our young children were thereby fortunate to have their mother caring for them full-time up until when Benjamin started kindergarten. The on-ramps, then and now, for women returning to work were not easy. It took a somewhat lengthy re-engagement effort by Trudy, which started with her volunteering with various agencies. The effort ultimately, however, culminated in a position at Genentech with responsibility for managing the supplies of all control material for the pharmaceutical products on the market and under development. After about 12 years with Genentech, Trudy segued to a position first with Amyris in Berkeley, who made biosynthetic oils for commercial use, and then with Bayer Pharmaceuticals, in both cases measuring product stability. In all of these professional engagements, Trudy organized and created multiple volumes of policies and procedures, as well as digitizing various data collection methods required for documenting stability results, leaving a concrete legacy for others to build on. Trudy took her retirement in 2018 at age 65. Trudy was eager to catch up on seeing the world through travel. Prior to her formal retirement, however, she did go on several tours with this church choir to Transylvania and elsewhere. And I even joined the group for a portion of the choir tour in 2013, a very memorable experience. We both went on a jazz music tour to Cuba in January 2015. Trudy went on to travel on tours, as we've heard from a few others, throughout Africa, including Morocco, South Africa, and Botswana, which included an actual safari, and a tour to Jordan and Egypt at the beginning of 2020, preceded by a visit to Cyprus with me. She and I also made several trips to visit Juliana in Northern Ireland during the past 6 years that she's been living there. As many of you know, Trudy was a passionate participant and member of this church. In addition to her participation in the handbell and vocal choirs, Trudy served on the board and a myriad of other committees, endearing herself to so many in this community over the almost 40 years of her affiliation. Among her gifts, Trudy was known for her amazing ability to engage with her friends and family in a way that championed her caring and interest in and love of others. She was so masterful at listening and being empathic. She became a frequent shoulder to lean on for so many in her community. This engagement was similarly practiced daily with our children when they came home from school, when she would ask each child what they learned in school that day. Trudy showed genuine interest in the answers to those inquiries from Julianne and Benjamin. Her abounding and indefatigable love and commitment to our children fostered their love of and excellence in learning throughout their school careers and more recently in their professional careers, accomplishments for which both Trudy and I have always been immensely proud. For someone who had so much to give and gave so much of herself to others, the loss we all now feel in the wake of Trudy's passing is very deep and painful. The challenge facing us now is to remember all of those blessings that she shared and gave to us, and to honor and cherish those memories. We must carry those blessed memories with us into the next chapter and learn from Trudy's example to practice compassion and empathy as masterfully as she did. We must do this so that her legacy of honoring and supporting others can survive deep within all of us who knew her and loved her so very much. May those memories be a blessing and a source of comfort to all who knew her.
So you can see we have this negotiated system of support structures. All right, and I will let everyone know that I have also antigen tested today and also PCR tested earlier this week. So, all right, thank you all for coming here today to honor my mom's life and support our family. The community support we received in these past few weeks has been very comforting and uplifting, and it's reassuring to know and see in particular that my dad is in good hands moving forward. So although there are sadly many more experiences, conversations, and questions I really wish I could have asked my mom, I wanted to take this opportunity to share a few memories, conversations, and experiences I did have with her that I will fondly cherish and have strongly influenced me into the person I am today. So first, being here at the Unitarian Church, where I grew up attending Sunday school for many years, reminds me of one of the places I saw close up Trudy's deeply rooted benevolence, both as a member of the community and as a mother, and in particular, that is serving breakfasts at the UUSF homeless shelter. So Trudy and I came to help cook and serve breakfasts at the crack of dawn approximately once per week during the month of February for many years, in elementary school through high school for me. Although I recall initially I was drawn to come because I liked the food, I remember that immediately changed. I also liked the company. I have very fond memories of talking with the other volunteers and homeless men there and really enjoying their company. As a 10-year-old, I think at that time I was just soaking in the fun of it, but reflecting back on this now, I can see two characteristics of Trudy reflected in these breakfasts. First, that she wanted to help people at her core. One time, I remember we came back to her car after serving breakfast and it was broken into. It was really demoralizing and frustrating, and some people I would expect might give up at that point and decide to never come back. But there was no way this was going to break her, and she kept coming back, deeply benevolent as she was. 2, my mom had a subtle way of teaching me about social justice and inequities in the world. Just by going to these breakfasts, I saw and talked to many homeless men that were so nice and so friendly and had jobs and made jokes and seemed very approachable to me, even as a 10-year-old. And these aspects were usually not apparent to me in homeless people I would otherwise see on the street in my daily life at the time. I don't know if my mom actively intended to instill this message that homeless people are normal, hardworking, kind, and funny, but she did. And thinking back, I see this as a part of her whole approach to parenting and motherhood. That is to say, her deeply rooted benevolence and desire to help people just sort of wore off on me by social osmosis. Besides learning a deep benevolence from my mom, she also helped instill my inner scientist. For those who don't know, my mom and dad both got PhDs in science, my mom in chemistry, my dad in biology, and I certainly always admired this about them, wanting to follow in their footsteps, but I think there were similarly, if not more, influential factors in how they raised me to be inquisitive, which I'll illustrate with this story. First, when I started playing trumpet in elementary school, I guess like many kids trying to learn a new instrument, I didn't enjoy it that much. And so in some sense, out of this discontent, but also out of general curiosity of a 7-year-old, right off the bat, I would constantly pepper my trumpet teachers with questions like, why should I do this? And what's the point of doing this exercise that way? These teachers really didn't like this, saying, you just do it that way because that's the way it's done. So I would then come back to my parents, particularly my mom, complaining about this, and guess what? She, and also my dad, encouraged me to ask more questions. This resulted in, I think, cycling through 2 or 3 trumpet teachers until I found one who was also motivated by curiosity and worked really well with me and with whom I am still friends. But the main point is how my mom encouraged me to continue asking questions. I would think most parents would just say, okay, listen to your teacher, I guess, they're the expert, but not Trudy. She had this strong sense of scientific, inquisitive thinking that was definitely instilled in me at a young age, and in this context, I think this was done actively and by intention. I learned a lot about my mom more recently, coming to understand her childhood, growing up in Nanaimo, British Columbia. Nanaimo in the local native language means big, strong person, which was very fitting for Trudy. Throughout my recent 6 years of graduate studies living in Victoria, British Columbia, which is just 2 hours away from Nanaimo, I had the privilege of Trudy regularly visiting me in Victoria. She also came to see her father, Arthur, who passed away in 2019, who still lived in Nanaimo, and I would often come along to Nanaimo during those visits, in addition to visiting Arthur on my own every few months or so. Among the things I learned on these visits, I learned that in grade school, Trudy would take oboe lessons in Victoria on the weekend, taking the bus down from Nanaimo, and how after her lessons, she would explore the city on her own. So it served as one of her first shots at independence, so to speak. One fond memory she told me was of strolling along a windy road going on Blanchard, where Douglas and Blanchard separate downtown, for those of you who know Victoria, pointing out to me where it was as we were walking one time and telling me of her fond memories exploring these streets and how she still dreamed about it as an adult. Of course, she told me in her dream that the road got unrealistically windy, which I sort of interpret like a Soutine painting, which also was an interesting real-time insight into my mom's imaginative psyche that I will take with me. I learned on these trips a little about how Trudy's family helped support her development as a scientist, particularly through discussions with her father, Arthur. I think I'll always remember one particular conversation I had with him when Charli and I were with him talking about biases women still face in being scientists. I remember he responded something like, wait, what? Women still face barriers going into science? That's ridiculous. It illustrated his deeply rooted belief that anyone who wanted to pursue a career in science should be able to. And I know that I'm grateful that he and my grandmother Olive were supportive of my mom on that front. I can see how their larger moral compass of equity and inclusivity was also an important ideology that was passed down from my mom's parents to her and then from my parents to me. During those visits in Victoria, I also, and also my last one my last 1.5 years living in the Bay Area, up until Trudy passed away, I should also mention that basically every visit with my mom, which was such a privilege to be almost weekly in the past few years, involved a hike. My mom loved the outdoors. She just loved it. The fact that so often she wanted to be outside and in the natural world, even during her lowest energy stages of going through chemo, and particularly that she requested her ashes to be scattered in a beautiful park on the south coast of Vancouver Island, where we went hiking once, and near where she went to summer camp growing up, gave me a small window into her value and identity with the natural world, and I will definitely always proudly associate that with my identity too. Okay, so again, I want to thank you all for coming today, for your love and support of Trudy and our family. And now, as many of you know, Trudy was an avid musician and music listener, and just the day before she died, she asked that I play trumpet at her memorial service. So in honor of my mom, I will play this song, Joy Spring by Clifford Brown, still fitting, it's still spring technically, which I would often play growing up, and I know she enjoyed listening to.
My big sister. Trudy would say she was born in the year Elizabeth became queen, 1952. We grew up in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island in beautiful British Columbia. Our parents hitchhiked west in 1949 from Montreal because they didn't want to raise a family in a place where little French children and little English children would not play together. They instilled in us a duty to care for those less fortunate. As a family, we went to all the concerts and theater we could get to. Every vacation as we were growing up, we would go to the big city, usually Seattle, to see professional theater and expand our horizons. We were raised to be self-sufficient and independent. When Trudy was about 11, she added to piano and ballet by taking up the oboe, certainly not the easiest instrument to play, and began traveling 4 hours round trip by bus by herself to oboe lessons in another city. Every year she went to YWCA Camp Thunderbird, first as a camper and then as a counselor at the southern end of Vancouver Island, in fact, where she wishes her ashes to be spread in that area. 50 or 60 years later, we could still sing all the lyrics to all the campfire songs. In high school, Trudy excelled in sciences and civics and competed on the Canadian National TV quiz program, Reach for the Top, where incidentally Alex Trebek got his start as a quizmaster. Throughout school, she was at a grade level 2 years above her age. When she was 16, she graduated high school and took the astonishing step of leaving our pulp mill town and going to the United States for university, and she never looked back. She studied sciences and languages, spent a semester in Vienna, went to Istanbul on crutches. One summer she worked at the government biological station, sorting shrimp by the color of their eyes, red, black, red, black. Quietly, on her own, Trudy began sponsoring a foster child overseas as soon as she started earning money as a graduate student, and continued that philosophy throughout her life, along the way founding and endowing and championing the Lionel High School Chemistry Scholarship to help students with financial need. I remember visiting her in Ottawa when she was working for the Canadian National Research Council. I remember visiting her in Nashville and going to Opryland in that momentous year when she and Stephen first met. I remember when we were pretty young, dancing and leaping around the living room to the Hall of the Mountain King. Or was that just last year? She introduced me to music by the Roaches, by John Hartford, and to Dylan's John Wesley Harding. She was my partner in sustaining our parents in their later years, particularly after the early death of our brother Rory. And she was my personal reference and source in all things. When in doubt, ask a chemist. She gave so much of herself volunteering for and supporting charities, and in raising with Stephen 2 brilliant and multi-talented adults, Juliana and Ben, and in welcoming the brilliant and multi-talented Charli to her family. But she still found time and made time to care for herself with extensive and adventurous travel and with involvement in the arts as supporter and participant. She liked cats, tea, Jane Austen, Alexander McCall Smith, bright colors, travel, music, and sunshine. I looked up to her in awe for her intelligence, her nobility, her patience. I was so proud when she got her PhD, and I still claim boasting rights. My sister is a physical chemist, my big sister.
Hello, I'm Susan Lovren. I'm an educator, and I live in a small town of White Salmon, Washington. So Trudy came from a small town and moved to a large city. I grew up in Seattle and moved to a small town. Oh, a little bit further? Okay. I'm honored to share a few memories from our 50-year friendship. And I hope from these memories, you can visualize a Trudy that you know and love. To me, she grew more wonderful every year. And as a teacher, we love visuals. So I need to hold Trudy close to me. So I brought the last present she brought me for my birthday, and it's a sunflower t-shirt. And she said in the little note, "I think of you in sunflowers." And I thought that was so lovely because I also think of Trudy dancing in vibrant colors, bursting with love and joy of life. And I can see from the beautiful flowers you have that that's Trudy. That's her color. She's colorful. She's a colorful person. I met Trudy over 50 years ago at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, during our undergraduate studies. And as you know, she was studying chemistry, and I studied history. We were roommates for our junior and senior years. Lucky me. We really bonded on a semester abroad trip to Vienna in 1972, and I believe it was a life-changing experience for us both. In Vienna, we shared a love of music, art, dance, culture, history, literature, and languages. And while other students in our group frequented the beer gardens, you would find Trudy and me in the museums, art galleries, and at free radio concerts. We waited hours in line for cheap standing tickets at the opera, which was just a few blocks from our pension. And then the music would magically transport us to other times and places, and we especially appreciated Mozart. Well, Trudy was the musician, as we've talked about, and I was the dancer. I took ballet classes in Vienna, and Trudy hauled her beloved oboe that you've mentioned before all around Europe. So because it was so fragile, we had to carry it by buses, trains, boats, and planes. And her sister just mentioned that she did sprain her ankle a little bit, was on crutches, so I ended up taking good care of that oboe. But our pension in the center of Vienna was treated to Trudy's delightful music when she practiced. And as you know, Trudy was very curious and adventuresome and challenged me to step out of my comfort zone. And my kids would say we took a lot of risks traveling, but we were 20 years old and we were inspired to experience the history and people of other cultures. So here's a few little stories from our travels. We traveled via the Orient Express train, packed like sardines from Vienna to Athens. And just like a scene in the movie, the train actually broke down in the middle of Serbia, and we were just all out there standing in the fields, making the best of it. And then, in search of ancient ruins, we hitchhiked across the island of Corfu. And then Trudy in Istanbul, we had to go to the markets because she wanted to get a leather coat. So she's bartering and trying to get the best deal to get that coat. And then we ferried across the Isthmus of the Bosporus for our very first step into Asia. Trudy was playful and loved people of all ages and could find fun in any adventure. We lived history in the 70s as we connected with young people in communist Prague who longed for freedom after the 1968 Prague Spring. Trudy was always well-informed and supported human rights issues around the world. So back in Tacoma, our senior year, we rented an apartment together. And as a chemistry major, one of Trudy's research projects was to test the nutrients of seaweed in Puget Sound at various tides. And what this meant was she had to get up at all hours of the night and morning and go out in the cold, rain, wet in the Northwest to collect these seaweed samples. And I have to say that this experience did not encourage us to eat seaweed at that time. It's okay now. And then fortunately, lucky for me again, one of her more tasty activities was baking the most delicious whole grain bread. And it was so good, fresh out of the oven, that starving college kids, we ate the whole loaf usually. And she also introduced me to a proper afternoon English tea, and complete with tea cozy. In fact, she's given me as gifts like a cat, because she loved cats, as we heard, cat tea cozy that I just love. For me, Trudy made it feel like a real home. And she probably made it feel like a real home wherever she went and whoever she was with. When we graduated, we kept in touch through letters and visits, and Trudy graciously supported me as my maid of honor at my wedding. We married amazing men and each had 2 wondrous children we're very proud of. And we grew through our rewarding careers and volunteer experiences. Foremost in Trudy's heart was always her love for her family and for all her friends. I admired Trudy for her strong values and love of learning. I was inspired by her intellectual curiosity, her respect for nature, her love of the arts, her pursuit of a healthy and spiritual life. And it's been mentioned before, but you could talk to Trudy about anything, as she was a compassionate listener and the best of friends. And she helped me to grow into a better person. I'm so grateful to have had such a long-lasting friendship with sweet Trudy, and I will truly miss her, and I'm forever strengthened by her love. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
My name is Diane Allen, and my wife Kathleen and I are members of this church. We met Trudy in the bell choir maybe about 13 or 14 years ago, and also worked with her, as many of you have, on other church activities. And as everybody has said, Trudy had a real zest for life, a natural curiosity, generosity, and true kindness. She was one of the most positive and upbeat people you could meet. She was soft-spoken, but she was a lot of fun, laughed easily, and had a strong dedication, as you've heard, to her beliefs and convictions. She was very easy to talk with, and before you knew it, she was your friend. And I know that many of you considered her your friend also. I personally love talking with Trudy about current medical and science issues from a scientific standpoint. But as others have said, you could have an interesting conversation with Trudy about anything. And since she was from Canada, including the Queen. Trudy had a variety of interests, as you've heard, and loved to travel, go to the arts, to theater, music. And she didn't necessarily wait for a companion. If need be, she just went and did it. She joined our bell choir in 2004, and later the singing choir. And you may not know this, but Trudy donated an octave of our bells to the bell choir in honor of her aunt, who was a respected educator in Canada. So she donated the 5 largest bells that you see down here and the 6 smallest bells behind us. And our conductor, Reiko, tells us that having that extra octave really enabled our bell choir to have access and play many compositions and arrangements that otherwise we would not have been able to play. So this was a wonderful thing that she gave us. Newer players also said that they became better just watching Trudy. Judy Nichols in our bell choir said just standing next to her, she learned how to improve her own techniques. And of course, Trudy continued to play with us, even as she was undergoing chemotherapy these last 2 or 3 years. At some point, Kathleen and I started going with Trudy to museum exhibits, concerts, and theater performances, particularly the Berkeley Rep, the Carmel Bach Festival with both Trudy and Stephen. And we loved doing those activities with her. We often shared meals before performances with Trudy, and we loved her gusto for good food. Her favorites included Southern biscuits and beignets, which are the pastries, the fritters that have powdered sugar on them. And at one memorable meal in Berkeley at a restaurant that had Louisiana cuisine, Trudy saved room and was able to eat 4 sizable beignets for dessert. We were very impressed. As we collected our memories, we realized that Trudy really did not complain about things, and honestly never said a bad word about anybody over our years of friendship. Not when a new job had a challenging commute or things went wrong at work. And I'm sure it wasn't because she never felt exasperated like we all do. She just chose to talk about something more interesting or wonderful. As you know, Trudy helped in many ways over the years in the church. I think she probably did just about every activity possible. I personally was very grateful to Trudy for agreeing to co-chair the nominating committee with me one term. She was very organized and was so wonderful and easy to work with. She really made the job fun to be with her. I know that many of you also served with her on many activities, and we hope you'll be able to share your stories too with each other and with Trudy's family. One thing we all have in common is that Trudy had such a positive impact in our lives, and we're grateful for having known her, and we will miss her more than we can say.
Sure on this shining night of stormy shadows round,
seems appropriate between the song sung by our choir and before our bell choir, both of which were graced by Trudy, to read these words by George Eliot, who asks, "Oh, may I join the choir invisible of those immortal dead who live again in minds made better by their presence. May I reach that purest heaven, be to other souls the cup of strength in some great agony, enkindle generous ardor, feed pure love, beget the smiles that have no cruelty, be the sweet presence of a good diffused, and in diffusion even more intense. So shall I join the choir invisible, whose music is the gladness of the world."
My name is Rabbi Katie Mizrahi, and I had the blessing of knowing Trudy for many years as Stephen's rabbi. She would come to our community events from time to time, and especially over these most recent years, we would go on walks with the three of us, always in beautiful natural places. She was always kind, not only to me, but to my whole family. And I learned a lot from witnessing the way she was able to support Stephen in his spiritual path, even as she had her own faith community and practice that was so rich. It was a rare partnership of mutual support and respect. This next prayer song is one that comes from a poem written by Hannah Senesh, who lost her life fighting the Nazis during World War II. Her words seem to be aware that her life may be near its end, but she prays not for her own survival, but for the continuation of the beauty and power of the natural world and the human heart. I would like to think that this prayer is a fitting tribute to Trudy, whose fierce love of nature and her family led her to fight while she could, but also to find acceptance as she neared her end, knowing that these things would endure beyond her own days on earth. After a round of instrumental music, everyone is invited to join me and sing along, and the words can be found in your booklet.
We've heard so many touching and heartfelt and beautiful stories of Trudy's life and the gifts of that life. One thread is still there. You heard earlier the Salish words of blessing that Trudy said to Stephen when they were married. Our next hymn is a poem set to music by Rafe Vaughan Williams, I remember now. The words of the hymn are words written by the 17th century poet George Herbert. The third verse of this poem, of this hymn, were the words that Stephen read to Trudy as his vows. Come, my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can move, such a love as none can part, such a heart as joys in love. We too know that joy, love, and heart that none can part. Let us join in singing Rise as you are able to hymn number 89, which you can find at the back of the order of service.
Please be seated. We are gathered here together to bid a final farewell to Trudy. We stand today in the presence of unfathomable mystery. With humble hearts, we bow before the veil which has fallen between us and the one we loved. Let none fear, for greater than sorrow is love, which endureth through pain and conquereth even grief. Love binds all hearts in bonds of fellowship and courage. They who love unselfishly face even the depth with courage, for their strength is the strength of many, and their courage rests upon the love of friends. As it is written by the psalmist, I will lift mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my strength. My help comes from the heavens and the earth, from good neighbors and the spirit of the hills and the valley, which I cannot make my own. My help comes from outside and from inside. It waits when I am impatient. It goads me when I hesitate from fear. When I am strong with courage and with faith, the sun and rain shall not smite me by day, and sorrow will not haunt me by night. Goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I will lift mine eyes unto the hills. They will keep my coming in and my going out. They look from afar like the inscrutable heights of the soul. And now, to Trudy, we say farewell. She goes free of the earth. The sun of her last day sets clear in the sweetness of her liberty. The earth recovers from her dying, the hallow of her life remaining in all her death leaves. Radiance knows her. Grown lighter than breath, she is set free in our remembering. Grown brighter than vision, she goes dark into the life of the hill that holds her peace. She's hidden among all that is and cannot be lost. In this spirit, then, the spirit of everlasting love, we commit thee, Trudy, to thy rest. The world is better for your having lived. We are better for having loved you. We loved you living. We love you now. Rest in peace, and in the love we bear you, farewell. And now, in our going, may God bless and keep us. May the face of God shine upon us and out from within us, and be gracious unto us, and bring us peace this day and forevermore. Amen.